Hello, Optimized Life. We are live. I'm so excited to host this session. So in this session specifically, we're going to be talking about the hormone hierarchy, which is a concept that I had scheduled this live, I think, in a couple days ago. And the more time that passed, the more I realized, like, wow, this is a really important topic to cover, because what I'm seeing right now between my, private patients, private clients, newly interested women who are interested in working with us, I'm seeing that there's so much confusion around what to do first when it comes to basically tackling your health. Now, if you're in my world, if you're in the world of healing your hormones, you're probably here because you're experiencing what I like to call the itty bitty shitty committee. So it's just a little bit of everything that's kind of bothering you, right? Especially when it comes to your hormones. Maybe you're experiencing hair loss. Maybe you're experiencing acne, eczema. Maybe you're experiencing difficulty losing weight, extreme fatigue, brain fog, all those things. We know those to be hormone-based symptoms. But sometimes what can happen is we don't exactly know what hormones they are, or when we find out what hormones they are, we realize, hello, it's more than just one hormone. It's a bunch of different hormones that are affected. And now I don't know what to do first, right? If you layer in other things like having a messy digestive system, maybe you have symptoms that stem from your gut, dysbiosis, histamine intolerance, a funky immune system, inflammation, all those things start to layer in, and we have a hard time figuring out what to do first. So in this live, in this video, if you're here with me live, feel free to say hello. I've got my chat box open. And if you're watching the replay, just hashtag replay as usual, and feel free to let me know any insights, breakthroughs along the way. I always love seeing your comments and responding to those comments and providing as much support as possible. So again, the intent of this video is to really help you kind of zoom out from your shitty symptoms, right? Zoom out from that and really look at this. Like, I'm sharing the doctor's lens, like the doctor's perspective of what's going on and what to do first, second, and third, especially when there are different symptoms that overlap with each other. Okay. Now that we got that out of the way, we have our hormone hierarchy. So our hormone hierarchy is the concept of which hormones take priority when it comes to your hormone healing. Now, in order to understand what that is for you, you first have to understand like what hormones make up that hierarchy, okay? So if you're watching with me, feel free to take notes. I think this is going to be kind of workshop style. Again, I'm really showing you this from the doctor's point of view, so it might be helpful for you to take notes and try and figure out what to do. So we have what I call our big six. These are our six key player hormones that are directly responsible for how energetic you feel, how mentally clear you feel, how fit you feel, how well your body responds to things like diet and exercise. Okay, so we've got six hormones that are so important for that. And those hormones are cortisol, insulin, progesterone, estrogen, your thyroid hormone, and testosterone. Okay, so those are what I call the big six. Now, in order to understand which ones you need to focus on first, you need to understand where your symptoms are coming from. So let's work, in order. If you're having cortisol issues, you might notice that you have a poor tolerance to stress. You might notice that you're gaining a lot of weight, especially around the belly. You might notice that your sleep and wake cycles are completely off. You're having insomnia. You're having really poor energy levels in the morning, crashes, things like that. So those all kind of point in the direction of cortisol. Now let's move on to insulin. You might be having insulin problems if you're experiencing poor relationship with your food, dizziness at random times of day or after food, energy crashes with your food. Again, weight gain, especially around your love handles, belly area as well, even like leading into things like diabetes, poor relationship with sugar, all of that's insulin. We also have the skin stuff that comes out of insulin. So adult onset acne, right? Skin issues, other skin issues, hyperpigmentation. You notice that your skin is maybe like getting darker in some areas. You're getting patches, skin tags. A lot of my girls start to get skin tags around the neck area. All of those things are insulin related. Now, we move on down to our female hormones, so what's known as estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen and progesterone, that when those hormones are affected, that's when you're going to start to notice more of those like PMS symptoms that happen around your period, issues with fertility. If you're at the age, where you're trying to conceive and you're realizing like it's harder for you than it is for other people, then usually you would go in and look at those female hormones first, okay? So aside from fertility, again, anything that happens around your menstrual cycle, PMS window, more moodiness, the week before your period, acne that's kind of cyclical. So it's not all the time acne, but it gets worse when your period's coming up. Bloating, irritability, all of those things, okay? And weight carrying around the hips. That's another really telltale sign as well of estrogen and progesterone imbalance. Next, we'll move on to testosterone. So testosterone is our male dominant hormone. It's higher in males than it is in women, but we women have it too. And so when you're experiencing testosterone imbalance, that's going to heavily impact your mood. So depression, low sex drive, irritability. And again, there's layers to this. It's really interesting that a lot of women who experience depression, low mood, think like, okay, I'm depressed. Or my mental health isn't good. And then they end up needing to like take these medications, which albeit for a lot of women is really helpful. But for the woman whose mood stems from poor testosterone issues, you can see how a prescription medication for depression isn't necessarily going to fix the root cause of that, right? So I'm sharing this with you to really help you understand that the symptoms can overlap. And they can come from different hormones, but not just different hormones, but different systems in your body. Okay. Is it mental health? Is it, your brain health? Is it your hormones? Is it your digestion? So really understanding where those symptoms are coming from and what to do first. And then of course, we can't forget about the thyroid. So thyroid, that's when you kind of get the whole like overstressed, overweight, overtired picture, right? Like you are just fatigued all the time. Your brain's not functioning optimally. You feel brain foggy, right? Fatigued, fat, and foggy. That's the whole thyroid triad. Okay. So now when it comes to creating your hormone-based protocol, it's really important to note that there are certain hormones that take priority over the others. And the two biggest hormones that you're going to need to focus your attention to are cortisol and insulin. Okay? Cortisol and insulin, sometimes thyroid, but I will get into that. Now, when my clients first start inside of our protocol, Effortless Energy, which is our 16-week custom protocol for ambitious women looking to recover from burnout and heal their hormones, when they first start, we always do this really detailed initial assessment where we're grading their hormones. We're using our unique hormone profile system to score their hormones. We're using what I call a body map technique. I won't go too much into that now, but we have a system for figuring out which hormones take priority. And over my years of doing this, I've noticed that it usually will come down to two primary hormones as the culprit for all their hormonal issues: cortisol and insulin. Now, understand that our system works with a very specific type of woman. And the woman that works with us usually are women who are high stress or have been through past traumas and are only starting to realize now how that's affected them. So how they perceive stress. They go through a lot of anxiety, um, pressure, pressure to perform and be high functioning. A lot of our women have, fast-paced jobs, kind of like the woman on the go. And so it's no wonder that cortisol and insulin are the first ones to get affected. Why? Because our ability to have increased cortisol levels or decreased cortisol levels depends directly on our stress perception. So how stressful we perceive things to be, okay? And not just perception, but like also the quantity, like how many different stressors there are, how intense they are, all of those things. Cortisol is a stress dependent hormone. So it is our major stress and energy hormone, actually. So when we're high stress, when we're low energy, when we're running on empty, when we're constantly trying to perform, and we're slowly getting depleted, cortisol is going to be impacted. And so that's going to manifest again into really poor energy levels during the day, awful sleep, insomnia, and weight gain around the belly, which are some of the primary things that women start this protocol for. Okay. So even though they may start to have symptoms in some of the other hormones, so even though their progesterone and estrogen's messed up and their period's messed up and their mood is low and their testosterone's messed up, when we rewind and go, what is the root cause, right? There's a lot of talk about root cause in the world of natural health. Now, root cause does not equal my hormones are a mess. Root cause does not equal my digestion is a mess. It's why are those things a mess? And so when we rewind and take it back, again, in the women I work with, because they have such high pressure lifestyles, highly demanding careers, recovering from past traumas, it always comes down to this stress and nervous system piece, and that's going to directly impact the cortisol levels. This is also why cortisol correction and control, we dedicate an entire module in our program towards cortisol correction and control. It's because 99% of our clients need that. And so there's such a heavy focus on that. Now, once they start to recover, once the cortisol starts to get corrected, enter the promised land, right? You're waking up with the best possible energy levels, which it might be hard to imagine right now if you're watching this and you're exhausted, but you have stable and consistent energy levels through the day. You're not getting a random 3 p.m. dip. You're not needing coffee at 5 in the evening. You're able to sleep on time. You're able to sleep without waking up in the middle of the night, right? And although those aren't things that you can physically see. So for example, when it comes to aesthetics, skin, weight loss, those are things you can physically see. And you're like, yes, I'm improving. My skin is getting better. My weight is getting better. Although energy is not something you can physically see, it is something that like tremendously impacts your quality of life. And so for me, that's a determinant of success. It's how I measure success. Success isn't always how well am I doing in my career? How much money am I making? How good do I look to other people? No, it's how do I feel when I wake up in the morning? Am I feeling calm? Am I feeling regulated? Am I feeling excited to start the day? Do I have everything under control? So that's why I say cortisol control a lot. It's because cortisol is kind of like your control hormone. It's your master switch. When cortisol is working optimally, you feel like you are in control of your life. You view things from a completely different lens. And that's why I'm saying, although energy and stress, they're not things that are tangible, they're not things that you can visually see, they impact your quality of life so much more than some of those other things that you can physically see. Okay, so let's take it back to the hormone hierarchy. Like I said, cortisol is one of the first hormones we notice to be the biggest culprit hormone, and or insulin. okay, and or insulin. Now, insulin, you can think of insulin as cortisol's brother. So it's kind of like where cortisol goes, insulin kind of follows, okay? So usually when I see messy cortisol in a woman, I'll also see something funky going on with the insulin, okay? And sometimes cortisol doesn't take priority. Sometimes insulin takes priority. Okay. So how do we know? Again, like it's kind of complicated to explain all in one live. We have different systems to figure out which hormones take priority. If you were curious about what that looks like, feel free to reach out. Um, Insulin, you're generally going to notice patterns with meals and meal timing. Symptoms are going to come with meals a lot of times specifically, or even when you're going hypoglycemic, like in between meals. If you're feeling like you need a snack and then the symptoms start to come on, you get hangry, that sort of thing, more points in the direction of insulin. So that's kind of how you can figure out which it is. But as I was saying, usually as like tier one, right? Tier one, which hormones are affected, it's normally cortisol and insulin that are affecting at least the women that I work with, okay? And so you're going to have two very different approaches. If cortisol is a primary hormone, we go into, cortisol correction, control, doing a lot of work on your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is basically your body's sleep and wake cycle. It's your daily rhythm. And so improving that can significantly improve cortisol levels. Additionally, working on that stress response piece, right? And I'll walk you through what that looks like in a little bit. So that would be the approach if cortisol is the issue. Now, if insulin is the issue, again, we're doing things more around food because this hormone gets released when we eat, okay? That being said, it still does have its own rhythm. It's a timely hormone. And what I mean by that is the way we fix it, we have to be very specific about the timing of which we do things, okay? And so our protocol, if insulin's the issue, is going to be more tailored around the food practices, times of eating, how many meals you're eating a day, if there's fasting, if there's not fasting. There's a heavy diet component when it comes to insulin. Exercise is also really important for improving insulin levels. But then, like I said, where cortisol goes, insulin follows. So by improving, again, the stress piece, you're also going to have a really positive impact on insulin levels. Okay. Now, like I said, those are like tier one hormones. And then we have sometimes tier one hormone can also be thyroid, right? I talked about fat, what did I say? Fat fatigued and foggy. So fat fatigued and foggy. If we determine thyroid is the main culprit, sometimes that happens and sometimes that's a tier one hormone as well. But usually let's put it this way, I'll usually see cortisol almost always with either insulin or the thyroid. Sometimes, very rarely, I'll see insulin alone. And again, that's why I stress the cortisol correction and control piece. That's why it is a core module inside of our program. It's because 99% of the women who work with us can benefit from that kind of correction. Now, if we go into our tier two hormones, okay, so estrogen, progesterone, your female hormones, and your androgen, so your male dominant hormone, testosterone, those are kind of tier two hormones. And why I say that is because you can actually improve those hormones by improving cortisol and insulin, okay? You can improve those hormones in other indirect ways by improving DHEA. So DHEA is a hormone that comes from our adrenal glands, from our vitality organ. So by improving DHEA downstream, you can improve estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those are kind of like our downstream hormones. That's why I'm calling them tier two, okay? Now, the issue that I see, the problem that I see, and I hope that you guys who are in your hormone recovery journey right now, if you're working with other professionals or what have you, I hope that you didn't kind of fall into this trap. But the issue that I see, so I'll preface by saying that about 70, 75%, maybe more, 70 to 80% of the women who choose to enroll into our protocol have worked with naturopaths, functional doctors, holistic doctors, health coaches before. And so they've already done some form of hormone healing. But where I see this starts to get really messed up is when the hormone gurus are only treating the downstream hormones. So I had this happen just today. Okay, so just today, I was on, it was a protocol building appointment today. Yeah, so it was like an hour and a half, 2 hour. I do custom protocol building sessions with a client, and she had worked with a holistic doctor before, and they had given her a tincture, so like a supplement to regulate her estrogen and progesterone levels. And she's like, yeah, I've done it for about, a couple months and I didn't notice anything. Nothing really worked. And I'm like, okay, well, when did your symptoms all kind of start? She's like, it got worse in the past year. And I'm like, okay, well, what happened in this past year? And so this is what we always do. We map out the symptoms against a timeline, a lifestyle timeline. What happened? Were there any triggering events? And she's like, oh, actually, yes, something did happen this past year. Family life got significantly, there's like traumas and other things, right? That she's going through at home. It's a chaotic environment. Family life is a bit of a mess. She's like, all of that kind of got worse in this past year. And so we realized for her that it wasn't about estrogen and progesterone. Yes, she did have PMS symptoms, but when we mapped it back, it all had to do with the anxiety and the stress she was experiencing in that chaotic environment. So again, what does that tell you? Stress response isn't optimized, nervous system is a mess, and that directly impacts cortisol. And so part of the plan that I gave her, again, is to go in and optimize cortisol. So we have our whole system kind of set up now, and it has nothing to do with estrogen and progesterone because she tried those supplements for a couple of months and it didn't work. It's because even though she's experiencing those symptoms, it's not the root cause of what's going on with her. Now, this case is actually a really good example to figure out where the gut fits into this, okay? Because her gut, this particular patient, her gut is also a mess. And so we have this, and weight loss is a big goal of hers. So her weight kind of just fluctuates up and down like crazy. So we divided her plan into different phases. So for her, phase 1 is going to be gut healing. There's so many layers to that. I'm not going to get into it, but phase 1 is going to be gut healing. Phase 2 is going to be weight loss. There's an intermediate step. So we talked about the hierarchy, right? So first we have cortisol, insulin, maybe thyroid. Before we get to our secondary hormones, we have another block, which is the gut. Our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those hormones, and how they metabolize really depends on the health of your liver, your detoxification systems, elimination systems. Are you pooping well? Is there anything off with digestion? And so before we can start to experience positive impact in those hormones, we need to heal the gut, which is probably another reason why the estrogen and progesterone support didn't work for this woman. It was because her digestive system is a complete shit show. Okay, so let's recap what we've talked about so far. Because if you're doing this, if you're following, you're taking notes, whatever, and you're trying to figure out how to get it all started for your hormones, it's important to do the correct things in the correct order. I'll preach this time and time again. Again, 70 to 80% of our clients have worked with holistic, functional, whatever doctors before. Things weren't done in the right order. And this is the difference between feeling better relatively quickly, like 2 weeks to 3 months, versus doing the same thing over and over again for 6 months, 4 years, 5 years. I spoke to someone just today who was like, I've been following the same holistic doctor's protocol for 4 or 5 years, and I'm not feeling better. And guess what it was for her too? The stress piece wasn't addressed. Okay, so let's recap what to do if you're doing this on your own and you're like, what's the order of which I should do things? First is stress, right? Stress response, resiliency, how we perceive the world around us, the health of our nervous system. I always say our psychology, so what's going on up here, shapes our physiology, what's going on inside here. Our psychology shapes our physiology, what's going on here. If we have a completely, healthy body, health practices are in check, we're exercising, we're eating all the right foods, we're taking all the right supplements, but up here, you're a worrywart, you're anxious, everything stresses you out, or you just don't respond well to stress anymore. You have a poor relationship with stress. You're not working on what's going on up here. It is going to impact your physiology. So the very first thing we want to make sure is stress and nervous system being addressed as a very, very first step. Now, mind you, this is the long game. It's not the short game. The short game, how you're going to feel better quickly, are the downstream things, making sure you're hitting the hormones, making sure you're taking the right supplements, making sure you're sleeping and waking up on time. Those are your short game pieces. And again, if you need help with that, feel free to reach out. Those things, when they're done correctly, they're relatively easy to fix. But the long game is your relationship with stress. And again, inside of Effortless Energy, inside of our 16-week signature protocol, we have a whole module dedicated towards working with your stress patterns, your stress phases, optimizing your nervous system. We actually do coaching specifically on stress resiliency. We've got a stress clinic where, we're constantly giving you exercises and homework pieces and things for personal development, not just for personal development, but, mental development, improving your relationship with yourself, boosting self-esteem, making confident decisions that align with who you are. Because a big reason why us women fall into burnout a lot sometimes is because we're not living in alignment with who we want to be. We're not meeting a certain expectation we have of ourselves. And so that's all the mental work. That's what we do in Stress Resiliency Clinic. It's how do we navigate all of that? So again, stress resiliency, that's the coaching that we do inside of our Effortless Energy program. So first thing you're going to do is brain. Then we're going to go, like I said, into our tier 1 hormones, really, really investigating cortisol, insulin, and thyroid, making sure those things are addressed and in check, which one of those exactly it is. And then we are looking at the gut. Again, this is like a very simplistic breakdown. Sometimes the order of things switch depending on who you are. That's where the customization comes in. And that's not something I can teach over a live, right? You need a professional for that. Truly, you don't want to approach it yourself the wrong way and then make a mistake. You want somebody trusted that you feel really understands your situation and has really worked with other women like this and knows how to get you the result. So after tier 1 hormones, and we're looking at gut optimization, cleaning it up, reducing inflammation, making sure digestion's amazing. And then downstream from there, whatever other hormones need to be addressed. Normally, I talked about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, all those hormones making up your big 6. So that's pretty much it, right? So you can actually take that and run. That is, again, from a doctor's point of view, how I would approach the woman in front of me who is experiencing that itty bitty shitty committee of my hair is falling out, my skin's a mess, I'm getting fat, I'm tired all the time, I can't think clearly. This is how it gets approached, at least inside of my protocols. Now, if you want to learn a little bit deeper about what I do inside our protocol, you can stick with me. Other than that, you can take the info and run. That's the hierarchy, okay? Now, I want to highlight some of the modules that we have inside of Effortless Energy that really, really help to address this hierarchy, okay? So like I said, we've got a whole section on cortisol control and correction. We have our body mapping technique. which really helps you to determine your priority hormones, what's going on, what you need to do first, second, and third. We have a really great assessment to help you get that information independent of lab tests. Because a lot of time, women are recommended to get lab testing done, and sometimes it's something really intense, like the Dutch test or the GI map test or some hormone test that they're like, this is like kind of a barrier to my healing right now. I either don't want to do the test, or, it doesn't make sense for me to spend this money on this test right now. I love me a good test. I love the testing, but we designed this system so that if testing was a barrier, you could get your result without going through that testing. Okay. Now, another module that we focus really heavily on is your stress response, working with your stress phases and patterns, being able to recognize what phase of stress you're in and adapting your protocol accordingly. Depending on what stress phase you're in, your protocol might be completely different from another woman who has very similar symptoms to you, but she's in a different phase of stress. Okay. Now, working with your stress response and stress phases, this is beyond yoga and meditation. So, again, this system was designed specifically for the woman who has a high pressure life career. She's always on the go. And so sometimes, although yoga and meditation may really help, it's just not something that this woman wants to do. I remember when I was in the beginning stages of my burnout and adrenal fatigue recovery, I tried going to yoga and I hated Shavasana was like the worst thing ever. I remember laying on the gym floor and being like, oh my God, when is this going to be over? I have a million things that I need to get to at home. I feel like I'm wasting my time right now. So I'm a recovering type A. So I would lie down and just have an aversion to laying down and resting. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm wasting time right now. Get me out of here. Meditation was difficult for me. I would try to, do the box breathing or follow my breath or focus my attention on something. And I'm like, wow, I actually can't focus. Okay. So if that's you, it's not your fault. It's just that you have your hormones that are working against you and are causing you to feel like you can't focus. And so you can practice meditation all you want. And yes, little by little, you'll get better, but you'd have a much more significant improvement if you just fix the hormones that were holding you back. You might be able to focus a lot better. You might be a lot more mentally clear. And then it might be easier for you to get on board with yoga and meditation. So now that I'm recovered and I'm healed, I like meditating, right? I don't love it. I still don't love it. I'll be completely honest, but I now don't have as much of an issue with resting anymore, working on some of those things. But at the beginning, it didn't work. And so again, if you're in your beginning phases and you're like, how do I heal from stress? What are some practical things that I can do? We go really heavy on stress resiliency and coaching inside of this program. Okay. So if you are interested in learning more about effortless energy, or if you are wanting to talk to me personally, we do offer free 20-minute consultations where we take the opportunity to really go over what's going on for you in your health right now. What are some of the things you've tried? And what are some of your goals? That's really, really important that you have a say in what you want out of your health, what your lifestyle looks like, and how to make your health plan fit seamlessly into your lifestyle. So it's a short but very effective and efficient call where we just kind of powwow through that, get you the clarity and an action plan to move forward. No strings attached. That's all completely free of charge. And so I'm going to drop the link if you are interested in scheduling that call for yourself. We don't offer it all the time. I don't even know if there's any spots left for February. There might be a few, but you can go ahead and book that call. And yeah, again, if this was helpful for you, drop your comments below. And that is all. Take care, ladies.